No problem.
Good morning. My name is Wayne Amundsen, and I'm the Executive Director of Campus Stores Canada. I'm joined today by Chris Tabor, who is Director of the Queen's University Bookstore, and Zachary Daler, who is National Director of the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations. Campus Stores Canada is the national trade association of institutionally owned and operated bookstores across Canada. Our organization has almost 100 member stores nationwide and more than 80 vendor and supplier associates. In short, if you know one of the more than 1 million students in Canada, there's a good chance that you know someone served by Campus Stores Canada. We are here today to call on the government to change elements of the Copyright Act that cause Canadian students to pay more for textbooks than their colleagues in other countries. The Copyright Act allows publishers to establish import monopolies on books from authors around the world, and in turn outlines what these import monopolies may charge for the price of books. Books imported by those other than these exclusive importers are referred to as parallel imports. Section 27(1) of the Copyright Act makes the parallel importation of new books an offense, provided that those exclusive distributors adhere to the regulations promulgated by the Act. Specifically, book importation regulations stipulate that an importer can charge a bookseller the price of the book in the country of origin, plus the difference in the exchange rates between the two countries, plus an additional 10 or 15% depending on the country of origin. We consider this to be a private tax on imported books. Established by public policy, it is paid from the wallets of Canadian students and their families and is collected primarily by foreign private interests. It allows publishers to receive an additional 10 to 15% of pure profit from their products before risking losing a sale to parallel importers. Importantly, this returns no appreciable benefit to the artists or authors who created the works in question. I'll now ask Chris to talk about the effect on bookstores.
Hello, my name is Chris Tabor, and I'm the director of the bookstore at Queen's University. I also lead CSC's Copyright Committee. This tax's design is an artifact of publishing, commercial distribution, and policy paradigms which have changed radically since these regulations were promulgated in 1999, most notably through the development of internet-based commerce. Unlike booksellers, individual consumers are not bound by these regulations and are able to freely and legally purchase books from the lowest cost provider regardless of location. And they do. Through internet retailers, Canadian consumers are often able to buy books more cheaply than a Canadian reseller can. It confounds market logic that a Canadian student is able to import individual books more economically than a multinational corporation can import commercial volumes of products. But this is the direct result of the tax's artificial inflation of domestic book prices. And we look forward to seeing that cease as we move forward. I'll now turn this over to Zach Daler.
Hello. As Wayne mentioned, I'm the National Director for the Canadian Alliance of Student Associations. CASA represents 300,000 students at 26 universities nationwide, and I'm very happy to be here today to speak to this important matter for students' pocketbooks. It is no secret that attending post-secondary institution is an expensive proposition. Costs for tuition, room, and board and materials seems to always be on the rise, while student opportunities to work are extremely limited. And there are always new costs on the horizon. Textbooks and other learning materials represent a significant portion of a student's annual budget, with a term's worth of textbooks often costing as much as, or even more, as a month's worth of rent. If this import book tax were eliminated, it would save close to $30 million annually for students alone, at no cost to the government. As a matter of perspective, the most recent reduction in the GST by 1 percentage point saved students $3.7 million on textbooks. I'd also like to speak to a point Wayne highlighted. Because of this tax, students are effectively forced by this tariff to turn to internet retailers based in other countries. It is important to underline that this is an extra step that is as inconvenient as it is absurd. Online purchases run the risk of delays, meaning it can be well into the student's term before they even have their book. Students shouldn't have to choose between getting the books they need when they need them and getting the best price, but this tax does that. There are a number of ways the government can remove this tax, be it through legislation by striking Section 27.1 of the Copyright Act, or regulations by amending the book importation regulation. By changing the regulations, the cost of textbooks for students will be reduced dramatically, virtually overnight. This presents a real opportunity for the Government of Canada to help students at no cost to taxpayers. It truly is a win-win situation. Thank you for your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, specific programs or universities that rely most on these imported books, would you say?
I'll turn that over to...
Typically in Canada, well, conservatively, 50% of the books on our shelves are have their origins from either the UK or the US. Some would argue that it's closer to 75%. So the vast majority of the books are attracting that tax.
Across Canada, then there aren't some areas that or programs that rely heavily on imported books?
No, that would be, there's nothing really regional about it. It's across the country.
For students, how many post-secondary students are you looking at?
That would be across the board. Sorry. Pardon?
An amount like of students?
Every student in Canada would benefit from the removal of these, from this tax.
Okay.
More question?
She's asking you how many students are there in Canada?
How many students in Canada? There's, I think, 1.6 million. That's off the top of my head. I mean, we can get you the actual number if you like.